they signed Wilson Contreras. I think most of us are big fans about that signing. We should be anyway. Really transform the catcher position offensively. You go from probably the worst situation in baseball to one of the best. The offense you're going to get out of the catcher position. But I'm still surprised they haven't done more. And listen, they've got several weeks, more than several weeks, before spring training opens. They don't play their first game in Florida until February 25th. So maybe they will spruce up the roster a little. Maybe it's a left-handed bat. But in an interview with Frank Cusimano, John Mozeliak downplayed the possibility of adding a bat. And I understand that part, too. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand where he's coming from. They've already got enough position players. I mean, they've got more. If they're going to carry Paul DeJong, and, he gets another free pass because they don't want to eat the final year of his contract, that takes up a roster spot they could put to better use. But also, if they're going to include Jordan Walker, part of their roster early in the season, that takes up a roster spot that could be put to use. So I don't know what they're going to do. To me, it's like they're caught in between because we tend to forget, and I know Albert Pujols contributed a lot to this, but if you take Pujols' 24 home runs, now you've at least plugged in theoretically with Contreras, who can hit 22 to 25. The Cardinals don't have a lot of sure things, and I'm not implying that all teams have sure things. But we tend to forget they did, even with all those outfield injuries, with Carlson down, with a down year, with O'Neill on the IL a lot, with Lars Nootbaar not really getting cranked up until they gave him an extended opportunity, pretty much like the beginning of July. And that's also when Pujols started to crank up. This was still one of the best offenses in baseball. And people can whine about what happened in the postseason. Their long track record now in the postseason has been terrible as far as scoring runs. I'm not claiming otherwise, but I do know, when you go into a short series against a team that's got some power, I'm talking about the Phillies, and you get nothing from the guy that finished first, won the MVP, and you get nothing offensively from the guy who was third in the MVP, and you get nothing. Well, you got a hit, I think, or maybe two singles, at least one from Albert Pujols, the comeback player of the year. When those three spots don't come through, what the hell do you expect will happen? You're going to go out. You're going down. I don't think that is something that management should be blasted about. However, this is why we always go around in circles on this. It's also true, however, that sometimes you got to win games when your big guns are quiet. And you do that by having more threats in your lineup. And if they all don't get it done, well, then you shouldn't even be in the playoffs. And you know what? If you didn't play in the NL Central, you may not have been in the playoffs. So I go around in circles on this, not because I'm indecisive, not because I'm afraid to criticize. I mean, all that stuff out the window. Of course I will rip this team if I think it's warranted, the front office or whatever. But on one hand, you look at it, it's like, well, wait a minute. They shouldn't give up on O'Neill. If he can stay on the field, we know what he can do. They certainly shouldn't give up on Carlson. The dude legitimately had an injury that impacts your hitting, a sprained thumb, and they screwed it up by not getting that taken care of earlier. Of course you want to play Lars Nootbaar. The guy was one of the best hitters in the National League the second half of the season. Of course you want to make room when it's time for a Jordan Walker. So if you're going to have four, and you include Juan Yepez in this, if you're going to have four, and then if you include Yepez, meaning Walker and Yepez together, 4 and 5, you're going to have 5 outfielders, and you're committed to the 3 starters, and you're not going to bring up Walker unless he's going to play a lot. I can see why you would say, well, we really don't need to add a bat. I mean, they could use, obviously, an impact bat. But there is a difference. They have too many position players than they know what to do with. Now, a couple of the position players shouldn't be here, DeYoung especially. But if you're truly committed to the outfielders that they are, and I don't think they're boneheaded about that. I think that they're justified in staying with them. And that's their big risk. Like, who are you going to bring in if there's no room at the inn? You know, if there's no vacancies, who are you going to bring in? Now, I'm talking about. I'm not talking about later in the season, because if O'Neill spends half the first half of the season on the IL and Carlson proves to be more than just a guy who, more as in less hitting than a guy had a thumb injury last year. If Nootbaar's not the same, I think he will be, though. Dude hits the ball hard and he draws walks. That's a really good combo. If those guys flop, well, your gamble has failed, and then you're going to have to go out and do something. But that's the point. I don't think there's anything wrong with waiting and seeing how those three players, but especially in O'Neill and Carlson, how those guys, plus a Nolan Gorman, to a lesser extent, plus a Juan Yepes, who did slug .447 last year. I don't think you bring in a bat just to bring in a bat. I'm talking about guys that are out there now who haven't signed with anyone. The idea that they were going to go make this big splash for a position player, you know, a shortstop or an outfielder, we know now that there was like zero chance of that happening. And so now it's like, well, what do you do from this point? On one hand, I'm disappointed they haven't done more, but I kind of understand why that's their thinking. And, you know, and please understand, I ask you politely what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that, you know, some of you may be thinking right now, well, Bernie, I mean, they could have signed this guy. They could have signed that guy. They could have gone after one of the shortstops. I don't disagree at all. They have the money to do it. They have the money to do whatever they want to do, period. There are no limitations except the limitations that they place on themselves financially. So I don't disagree with you. My point is we're sitting here on December the 20th, and that particular vessel has sailed. In other words, when I'm talking about where they are now, the personnel they have now, well, you can't go out and sign Trey Turner. He's gone. All the guys who would really upgrade the team, they're gone. So we can criticize the fact that they're in this spot. But now that they're in this spot, what's the point of just going out and getting a guy that where you're not going to have a lot of at-bats to spread around? What I hope they don't do is carry a guy, if he's continued to stink, to waste a roster spot on him one more year, right? So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I do know what to say. I mean, I went and looked at some bats out there. If you want to read it, here I go again, but I don't promote this very often. Go read it at scoopswithdennymac.com. I just had a list. Here are some guys available. They're kind of interesting. You know, Jim, one thing I came away with that.
What's that?
If they were going to add a left-handed bat, right?
Yep.
You bring back Corey Dickerson. There's not much out there. Dickerson did a hell of a job for them once he got settled in. He came off the the IL. He was great.
I can see that as the case. I understand that. Yeah. The second half of the year, at times he was one of your key spots in your lineup. You go, hey, he's hot. He's going to get on base. He's going to get a hit when we need it.
He was phenomenal. But then you look, and here's where I get frustrated with the Cardinals. And I'm not suggesting that they should have signed Matt Carpenter. I'm not. I'm really not. But you look at the Padres. They got a lot of hitters in the house, right? Those boys can mash. You know, they give Matt Carpenter a 1-year deal that really is a 2-year deal in his favor. But let's just concentrate on the $12 million. You know, they signed him to a $12 million deal for next season, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet you got guys out there, if you wanted to, you got guys you could bring in for, I think, at a pretty bargain rate. But that applies to relief pitchers. That relies to depth starters. It relies if you want to just have a little insurance among your position players, maybe go get a better infielder offensively than what you have in Paul DeJong. You know, the Padres can say, well, we got a lot of players we like. We're pretty much set, but let's give Matt Carpenter $12 million. You know, and the Cardinals are like, I'm watching some of these relievers sign with other teams. Seth Lugo being one, Michael Givens being another here recently, and there have been others, but I'm talking about the most recent guys.
Mm-hmm.
They all have high strikeout rates. They've all pitched in big games, and I'm like, well, what? No one's asking you to sign Trey Turner. That's over with. That didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. But you don't want to lay out a couple $1 million, $3 million for a really good reliever, really? You've got Fort Knox there, Fort Knox security in that bullpen? Is that what you think? Really? That's the part that bugs me. No longer can argue about, well, they should have signed this, the shortstop, they should have signed. It's, again, the vessel sailed. It's now irrelevant. But to this point, they haven't taken advantage of the remaining market to bolster their bullpen. With some really, I think low contracts. I don't get it. And that's the thing. This is why people get so frustrated with this management. Because even when they can improve their team with an economy level signing, they still don't do it. Because they think they're smarter than everybody else. Oh, we love our bullpen. Oh, we love our rotation. Oh, we love it. And it's like, okay, you're smarter than everybody else. I wish your butts played in the National League East or the American League East for that matter. And maybe then you wouldn't be walking around like you're Abner Doubleday, you know? These guys have such an easy ride in the Central, but they confuse it with actually being smarter than a lot of the really good teams. Like, oh, no, we love our bullpen. Oh, no, we love our rotation. Yeah. That's because you get to beat up on the Pirates and the Cubs and the Reds a lot. And a Milwaukee team that was disengaging last year. So that's why I totally understand why people get frustrated with them. I really do. But the Contreras signing, hats off. I'm still really excited about that.